Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Monday and welcome to Daily Dose. We are going to get right to it because I have a story that I'm going to read you. So we did this on Christmas Day and it felt topical then because it was a Christmas story. This feels topical in light of the Derek Chauvin verdict last week, in light of 2 weeks ago reading the piece, or maybe it was last week, that the young man wrote about taking his child to daycare and all of the things that he would not do as an African American. And my aunt sent me this book. So the same aunt who sent me The Choice, Katie, my cousin's mom, sent us this book too. It is called Belle, The Last Mule at Gee's Bend. Don't get off because you think a children's book. Stay with me.
Oh,
I
yes.
think you'll be happy you did. And my goal is to prove my BA in theater arts and get through it.
One thing I want to start though, remember the point I'm going to make after this is a children's book. So
Yep.
think about that when
Belle.
we get to the end.
The Last Mule at Gee's Bend. Alex sat on a bench outside the store. He wanted to go and play, but his mother had told him to wait for her. There was nothing to do on the porch but watch an old mule eating in the garden across the street. There was no breeze, not a leaf moved in the chinaberry trees. It was so still that Alex could hear the mule munching on a row of bright collard greens. He watched as the mule's big fuzzy ears twitched away a pesky fly. An old woman walked slowly up the wooden steps to the store and sat down on the bench next to Alex. She fanned herself with a folded newspaper. He looked at her out of the corner of his eye. She was watching the mule too. The old woman chuckled and then said in a soft voice, "Myself, I like collard cooked with some ham and spiced with vinegar." Alex smiled. "I was just thinking about how that old mule sure can eat collards," said the woman. "Is it allowed to? I mean, eat someone's garden like that?" asked Alex. Whoops, I should show you the picture, not the words. I'm going to be so curious to know if you have ever heard this story. "Old Belle? She can have all the collards she wants. She's earned it." The woman looked straight at Alex and said, "I let her loose, you see, and that's my garden. I thought I'd just sit in the shade and rest a bit before I shoot her out." "But ma'am, why do you let her eat your collared plants?" "My name's Miss Petway, son," she said. "What's yours?" "I'm Alex," he answered. "Well, Alex, there's enough greens in my garden for both of us. And Belle's a very special mule. She's a hero here in Gee's Bend. I like to show her some respect." "What's so special about that old mule?" Alex asked as he stood up. Oh my gosh, the illustrations are as fabulous as the story. The woman took a deep breath. "Now, that's a long story, but if you have some time to sit," she patted the bench. Alex hesitated. He wondered if she was just a crazy old lady, but he was curious, and after all, there was nothing else to do. "Gee's Bend has always been poor," she began. "There's not much here but farmland. We always needed mules to help us work the land. Not many of us could afford a car." "How could you get anywhere?" Alex asked. "Well, that's just it. Benders, that's what we call ourselves here, used mules to haul most everything. Belle's been with us for many years now. She was here the day Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. came to speak to us way back in 1965. "I know about Dr. Martin Luther King from school. Did you get to meet him?" Alex asked. "Oh, yes, sir, I did. That night there was a terrible storm. Lots of people thought he wouldn't make it to see us poor folks. I waited not far from here with Belle. It was past midnight when Dr. King finally arrived, but he still spoke to us that night and nearly took the roof off Pleasant Grove Baptist Church with his wonderful words." "What did he say?" Alex asked. "Well, in those days, we had a ferry to cross the river into Camden, where there were jobs and stores. Dr. King told us to take the ferry to Camden and register to vote. 'Cross the river for freedom,' he sang out that night. Even though we were poor dirt farmers, descendants of slaves with only mules to carry our loads, he said, 'I come over here to Gee's Bend to tell you, you are somebody.' He told us we had a right to vote. You understand, Alex, back then no black person from Wilcox County had ever dared to vote. Were you scared? Alex asked. Ms. Pedway sighed and thought for a moment. I don't think we were scared. Not after Dr. King spoke to us. We felt strong like our mules, and we did just what he told us to do. So many went to register that we almost swamped that little ferry. Some Benders went on to march with Dr. King in Selma, in Montgomery, in Birmingham, and in the March on Washington. Benders are loyal, like mules too, Ms. Pedway added, chuckling. We read about all those marches in school, Alex added. But we must have scared the white folks in Camden, because the next thing we knew, they shut down the ferry. The white sheriff was a big bully who wanted to keep us in our place. He told reporters, we didn't close the ferry because they were black. We closed it because they forgot they were black. So, when it came time to vote, we had no way to cross the river, but we wouldn't be stopped. Benders are like Old Bell here, not fancy, but strong and steady and stubborn. We filled our few cars with as many people as we could fit, and then our mules carried wagon loads of people round the river all day to vote. It took half a day to get there, but it was worth it. We sang and clapped all the way into town. Folks in Camden sure were surprised. You showed them, Alex laughed. Is that why Bell's your hero? There's more to it. A lot of people here lost their jobs in Camden because they voted. Things got bad. With no jobs, we had no money for food. So some of us joined the Freedom Quilting Bee in Alberta, and eventually we started our own. Called ourselves the Gee's Bend Quilters. You see, the women of Gee's Bend had always made quilts. Some of the most beautiful quilts in the world were made right here. Soon they were being sold all over the United States. We became famous. That's why I'm here. My mother came here to shop for a quilt today, Alex explained. That's a happy ending, isn't it? But it's not the end of the story for Belle. Miss Pedway's voice turned softer. Alex, do you remember learning in school what happened on the 4th of April in 1968? Alex looked into Ms. Pedway's eyes and saw how sad they looked. That's when Dr. King got shot, isn't it? He asked. And for the first time, he felt the sadness himself. Yes. Everyone in Gee's Bend was grieved. Miss Pedway took a deep breath and looked out at the trees. A slight breeze seemed to shuffle the leaves. We got a phone call asking if our mules could pull Dr. King's coffin through the streets of Atlanta during the funeral parade. They wanted to use our mules, not fancy draft horses. Mules take their time, work hard, and they never back down. Mules aren't pretty, but they are somebody. It meant so much to us that Benders could honor the memory of Dr. King. Belle and another mule named Ada were loaded onto a truck to begin their journey to Atlanta. But as usual, it wasn't going to be easy. State policemen stopped the truck and asked the drivers to show them a permit for hauling livestock across state lines. They threatened to arrest the drivers when they didn't have the papers, told them they'd have to turn back. We got the word to Dr. King's headquarters in Atlanta about what had happened, and they called the state police and the governors of Alabama and Georgia. They told them it would look shameful on TV and in the news all over the nation if they refused to let our mules pull the funeral train. After that, the troopers escorted our Belle and Ada right into Atlanta. Belle pulled Dr. Martin Luther King's coffin? Alex asked. Yes, sir. Belle and Ada bravely pulled the wagon 3.5 miles through streets that were full of grieving, weeping people. As they passed, people reached out and touched the mules and the casket. Imagine the thousands of arms and hands reaching out to them. But they kept moving, slow and steady. They didn't back down or get scared, just kept going. The funeral was televised around the world. 60,000 people gathered around the Ebenezer Baptist Church, and tens of thousands more lined the streets. We were very proud, and that's why we love our last mule here at Gee's Bend, and why I let Belle eat all the collard greens she wants. Alex and Ms. Pedway turned to look at old Belle, who stopped her munching and looked up at them. They both laughed. Yep, she's had her fill, Ms. Pedway said, slowly rising off the bench. Want to go and meet her? Yes, ma'am. Alex skipped down the steps and over to Belle, who let him scratch her fuzzy ears. Alex looked at the mule's eyes and thought about all the history she had seen. Thank you for telling me about Belle, Alex said. Now you know what Dr. King meant when he told us that even though we led simple, hard lives, we were still somebody, she said. And even an old mule can be a hero, Alex added. Ms. Pedway smiled and walked away, leading Belle behind her. Oh, I got through it. Look at this picture. There they are. Oh, Dr. Mary, I get to keep my BA in theater.
You do.
Wow.
Well deserved.
Wow, I was
Jada
a
Chris.
puddle when I read this
She was.
yesterday.
I thought something bad had happened because Dane was sobbing in the kitchen.
Yeah, but then you read it and you got kind of weepy
I
too.
did. I did.
So our question for you is, do you know this story? And more importantly, did you see, or if you were alive, or have you ever seen actual footage of Dr. King's funeral? Because I never have.
I never have. It's the thing I wanted to point out. Dr. King advocated for civil rights for everybody. This is a children's book. There's no hate message in here. Mm. It's a historical story with a nice little happy twist about what mules do and this hidden history and stuff. And even Nelson Mandela said that no person is born to hate, you're taught how to hate. This story does not teach you how to hate.
Yeah.
So whatever's going on in the world, especially in Minneapolis, which is only a 2.5 hour drive from us.
Well, let's not forget Moorhead.
And Moorhead.
Where the Muslim
mosque
was vandalized this weekend.
This is why one of the reasons why we're talking about this. We try and stay topical. You're taught how to hate, and then there's this fine story here about a lovely story about what you can do if you're just asked to do things.
Well, and if you're valued.
Yes.
And if you're seen and made to feel like whatever you're contributing matters. So actually that goes back even to you talking about addicts and the way society throws people away and decides who's valuable and who isn't. Everybody has value. Everybody matters. And if you don't know anything about this Gee's Bend, do yourself a favor and look it up, this quilting group. It is astonishing. So actually, and I'm sorry I don't have them there upstairs, my aunt sent me 3 books this week. 2, another children's book about the quilting circles, and then kind of a historical book about the actual quilts that were made out of desperation simply to stay warm. But the incredible craftspersonship and artistry of them, it's a real thing. They are now considered, the quilts from the women of Gee's Bend are now considered some of the finest craft of the 20th century by, whoever matters in the art world. So look them up, Gee's Bend, GEE''S Bend. It was a plantation that after the Civil War was turned into sharecropping plots and was all the descendants of the slaves of that family. And boy, it's not much better today than it was then. And that's because we have allowed it to just, some people matter and some people don't. We got to get past that. And some of our work is to remind people that addicts matter. And in a moment like this, people of color matter. For heaven's sakes, I can't believe it is 2021 and that needs to be said anywhere.
Yeah.
And
still.
Likely we are preaching to a choir or you probably wouldn't be watching us. But do your part. Find the book, learn the story, figure out the history, and share it with somebody who is young. Because Maz is right. We can change the way people think if we introduce love and tolerance and acceptance and finding the good and the valuable in people as opposed to anything else. Have an excellent Monday.
See you tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow.